So a couple months ago, I was having this really awesome day. I had just gone to Starbucks, so I had my beloved iced coffee in hand. The weather was just perfect out. You know, we had this really amazing fall. My sunroof is open, my windows are down, I'm driving along, good song on the radio. I'm pretty darn happy. And I like to think I was channeling my inner Corky Romano there. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I know, quality movie. I'm the one to go to for quality movies. Not really. I was feeling really great. And then I come upon this car, and I see a Confederate flag on it. And you know what? They didn't just have just one Confederate flag, not two, or three or four. No, they had 5 Confederate flags on their car. And within a split second, I was pissed. All of a sudden, I felt this rage. I was like, why would you put that on your car? What is wrong with them? They should know that they are wrong. And all of a sudden, I felt like, you know, like road rage, where I was thinking like, if only I get next to them and, you know, let them know what I really thought. And fortunately, you know, I did not hold up my sign that I keep in my car that says, "You're an idiot." I felt I was really acting kind of out of character. I mean, I generally don't get that angry about things. But it was within a split second that I was making this moral judgment against this person that I did not know. Hopefully it wasn't their car. That's what I like to think of right now. But I found myself, fortunately I didn't do anything, first of all. The thought they could be concealing and carrying, maybe I don't want to get shot today. You know, lots of productive thoughts. Fortunately, this person ended up exiting before I passed them, and we didn't sit at a light next to each other, because in retrospect I was thinking, man, I don't know what I would have done. Probably nothing. Just would have sat there really angry. So I had about 10 minutes after they had exited the highway and I kept on going to my house to kind of think about what the heck just happened to me. I went from being really happy, just having a really great day, to seeing one image and then feeling like angry and mad and making this moral judgment against this person who probably, who knows why they, I mean, well, I'm not going to get into the Confederate flag total debate. Obviously, I just gave my opinion. But I don't know where they stand with all of that. And ever since it has kind of bothered me. I didn't like how quick I was to just get mad. I didn't know this person. One, it doesn't really hold up to our first value. People are more important than beliefs. I hadn't even met this person. I was just ticked that they had the stickers, 5 stickers, on their car. So a couple weeks later, I decided to start reading this book by Johnathan Haidt called The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And it just so happened that it kind of gave me some more information as to what I experienced when I saw that flag. So Johnathan Haidt, if you don't know, he is a psychologist who focuses on the study of moral psychology. So but a description as to how our morality is formed. And I'm not going to get into that. But it's been really interesting because one of his first principles of moral psychology is this: intuitions come first, strategic reasoning comes second. This is called the social intuitionist model. Now, I'd like to define what he means by intuition, because when I first read that, I kind of had some preconceived ideas of what I thought intuitions meant. So, what does Johnathan Haidt mean by intuitions? This is where semantics do matter. He's referring to the dozens or hundreds of rapid, effortless moral judgments and decisions that we tend to make every day. So my flag incident that was an intuition, that snap anger, that righteousness that I felt about myself, that I knew something that obviously he didn't. That was an intuition. My intuitions came first, and then strategic reasoning would follow next. He likes to use this example. So we have an illustration for this of an elephant with a rider. This was just a random picture, so don't read into any of the pictures. Elephant guy. So he uses the elephant to represent the automatic processes that we experience. That's that intuition. He chose an elephant because obviously they're bigger than a horse. And elephants happen to be very, very intelligent. Those automatic processes have been running the human and animal mind for about 500 million years. So it's a good way to think of it like software that has been improved through thousands of product cycles. So I'm referring to those gut feelings, visceral reactions, emotions, and intuitions that make up most of our automatic system. That is the elephant. My elephant saw that flag and got my emotional, physical, and mental self on high alert to attack. The rider represents this strategic reasoning. This rider can see further into the future, sitting up high, able to kind of see everything by examining alternative scenarios in our head. So, after the fact, I started to think about, oh, good thing I didn't do anything because they could have had a gun, I could have been stupid, I could have offended someone for no reason, when maybe they were borrowing the car, maybe they're really good people and they just don't know. That's what I like to think. The rider can also learn new skills, master new technologies which can be deployed to help the elephant reach its goals. And of course also help the elephant to avoid disasters, such as getting shot. The elephant can also act as a spokesperson for the elephant, even when the rider doesn't know what the elephant's even thinking. The rider is great at creating these post hoc explanations for whatever the elephant has just done, and it's good at finding reasons to justify whatever the elephant wants. I like to think of this as when I crave chocolate, and I probably should be eating better. And we all know, though, that chocolate is healthy, right? If you eat dark chocolate, probably not when you eat like 5 bars of it, but I can justify that as like just 5 times the serving of antioxidants. So kind of in that same example, my elephant really likes chocolate. I'm not starving, obviously, so it's not part of a great need, other than the fact that I'm feeling that intuition of wanting something really yummy and then justifying going ahead and eating a ton of it. Also, when this elephant leans a certain way, it draws the attention of the rider that way. So if I suddenly start looking, no one looked up. So you know how sometimes when you're on a street corner, and because we all stand on street corners occasionally. So say you're outside and you see someone like point up, you see another person maybe point, they're looking at something, your attention is automatically drawn to that, you kind of just unconsciously start looking at it. Same kind of thing, your elephant, has these natural automatic leanings, and then your rider, your strategic reasoning then starts, to kind of look that way as well. The elephant and the rider bring their own intelligence. When they work together, it's really great. It's what makes us really incredible human beings. But the elephant and rider, they don't always work so well together. And it kind of creates this complex relationship. So one of the research stories that Johnathan Haidt's team used to determine some of these conclusions, I'd like to share with you today. It's a little edgy. So we already are dropping F-bombs in songs, so I figure I can go here. With this specific scenario, the researcher's job was to tell the other person, I'm going to give you this scenario, you're going to tell me what you think, and then it'll be my job to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to talk you out of whatever your judgment was on this scenario. So let me read the scenario for you. Julie and Mark are brother and sister. They are traveling together in France on summer vacation from college. One night, they are staying alone in a cabin near the beach. They decide that it would be interesting and fun if they tried making love. At the very least, it would be a new experience for each of them. Julie was already taking birth control pills, and Mark was using a condom just to be safe. They both enjoy making love, but they decide never to do it again. They keep that night as a special secret, which makes them feel even closer to each other. All right, what do you think about that? Yes, I just brought up brothers and sisters making love. Most of you are probably like, hell no, that's just wrong, right? You have this visceral, well, all you guys seem like that scared by it, actually. So if there anyone do any like real studies on this crowd. Most most people, and I would expect us to be maybe a little more liberal and being like, well, most people have this visceral reaction to this story. Because you, hopefully, I'm sure most of you silently in your head had that rapid, effortless moral judgment, which Haidt refers to as that those intuitions come first. So when these researchers would try to argue these people out of their conclusions, usually this starts with, oh, genetic defects from inbreeding. Well, hold on. They were using 2 forms of birth control, and then, if she got pregnant or something, I guess one person said, well, abortion, and I don't want to go there, but, but they're not going to get pregnant. They were taking every precaution. So you don't have to worry about the effects of inbreeding. Obviously, that's not good. It's bad. The next conclusion is usually it will mess them up emotionally. Well, no, in this scenario, they make it very clear that they enjoyed it and they brought them closer as a result. Lastly, people will be like, well, it's illegal. And it is actually, tends to be illegal in the United States. I don't know if you knew that, so sorry guys if you are considering after the fact. But in France, that's why this takes place in France, because it's not illegal in France. So, I ask you, is it okay to assert that private acts are wrong because many people find it just disgusting? I have another example here. You know those family photos that people are like reenacting of siblings? So this is siblings. This is a sibling group. This circulated on the internet quite a bit, and it didn't get the reaction of the, oh, cute brother, sister, like cute little scenes. It's like, wait a minute, he's totally holding her breasts, and she's without a shirt. Okay, so this, I feel like, is another really good example of those quick, rapid judgments where we're like, what is wrong with that? And then if you start to think about it, it's like, well, wait, where did if everyone's consenting and they're okay, then maybe it's fine. Chuckle. Tammy Somer wrote in Psychology Today about this. He said, it's Tamler Somer. The scenario is designed to ward off the most common moral objections to incest, and in doing so demonstrate that much of our moral reasoning is a post hoc affair, after the fact, a way of justifying the judgments that you've already reached through an emotional gut response to a situation. Although we'd like to think of ourselves as arriving at moral judgments after painstakingly rational deliberation, like all of us good, reasoned people, or at least some of us deliberate anyhow, Haidt's model, the social intuitionist model, sees the process as just the reverse. We judge, and then we reason. Reason is the press secretary of the emotions, the ex post facto spin doctor of beliefs we've arrived at through largely intuitive process. Well, learning this was great and all, but then I'm like, well, this kind of sucks. So if this is our human tendency according to where this research is right now, and this is still all very new research, moral psychology-wise, how do we overcome this human tendency? How do I make sure that my reality is truly known through reason, one of our OASIS values? Haidt shared in his book that we make our judgments rapidly, and we are dreadful at seeking out evidence that might disconfirm those initial judgments. Yet, friends can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. They can challenge us, give us new reasons and arguments that sometimes trigger new intuitions, thereby making it possible for us to change our minds. So it is through social interaction where conversation can overcome the tendency to justify our bias. In other words, right here, right now, these interactions that we get to have, creating this opportunity here, is really, really important. And then the conversations that we can take out from here are really, really important. So this is the football play-by-play of Johnathan Haidt's diagram for this. I'm not going to focus on this too much, but it's interesting because you'll see here the 4 main links of how we will reason, and these 2 rarely used links. Now, as a good non-religious person now, and this person who feels like I'm just so much more reasonable now that I'm not religious, we tend to think that we operate with this all the time. Reason, judgment, and then that private reflection. But I challenge you to recognize, that's what's up top, that we really don't use it that often. We really don't. It's only through number 4 here, social persuasion, that we actually do have the opportunity to possibly change our minds and reconsider things. About, let's see, it's been, how long have we been married now? 12, 13 years, and early in our marriage, we had some friends come down from Minneapolis to visit us when we were living in Nashville. And at that time, we were pretty conservative in our political beliefs. Our friends actually were not. And so I recall us having this really great, slightly heated but productive conversation about politics. And he encouraged us to, as a result, buy Tony Campolo's book, Speaking My Mind. And it was this conversation and then this book that led us probably down to the path where we are today. I'm pretty sure Tony Campolo would be proud of that fact. It just made us leave it all. But for us, this conversation was the starting point where we started to think maybe slightly more liberal politically, where then it kind of opened the door for us to consider maybe more liberal Christian ideologies, and then all of the other kind of pieces kind of fell away as well. But it was that one conversation, and they are good friends of ours. It was heated, but my friend Nate, he just gets heated about almost any subject. But looking back, I don't think all of our social persuasion conversations or any of that are always going to be that big. But I thought it was really interesting that that was a social interaction. It is really hard, actually, to change someone's mind politically. And he talks about that in much greater lengths, which I can't even fathom getting into. But he addresses that really well and very interesting in this book. I do highly recommend it. But this one conversation, it made a huge difference. It is totally why you guys are all here today, probably. It probably really had a lot to do with that. And it was through social interaction. It wasn't me, just sitting around suddenly reading a thread somewhere and being like, oh, well, maybe I'll think this instead. No, it was because we were in really great discussion with someone else. So what are the implications of this? I want you to consider when you interact with someone who has a different ideology or moral, however you kind of differ, to talk to their elephants first. If you ask people to believe something that violates their intuitions, they will devote their efforts to finding an escape hatch, a reason to doubt your argument or conclusion. Haidt explains this by saying you need to use your intuition, not our rational mind. Avoid direct confrontation, convey respect, warmth, and openness. Develop that number 4 that was up here before you attempt the number 5 of reasoned persuasion. You need to see the other person's perspective as well as their own, deeply and intuitively. You may find your own mind opening up in response. One of the quotes he shared is, "Empathy is an antidote to righteousness." When we interact with other people who are different than us, this also can make a big difference. I would like to, here's you speaking to your elephants, so sorry about that. I'd like to also challenge us to be more intentional about seeking out conversations that might be uncomfortable. If one of the only ways that we can overcome our tendency to have so much bias and then to reason to support all of our bias, we have to seek out interactions with people who are different than us. We naturally, as human beings, tend to like to be with people just like us. It feels safer, it's more familiar, and I totally get it. But I think as a country, we may be better off if we start to have tough conversations in a really great, loving, caring way. Lois Bugg Shadrick came and spoke to us about laying the groundwork for a conversation about race. And one of the things that stuck with me the most was that during Q&A, someone asked, well, how do you start these conversations? Kind of hence the, still felt stuck on it. Like, well, how do you even start it? And she went from the front of the room to the back where the person who asked the question was, and she just was like, well, hey. And she started this side conversation while all of us listened, you know. And she was just trying to say, just talk to us, you know, like, just, feel free to find those opportunities to try and start the conversation. Now, obviously, it's a two-way street, but I think it's really telling. I think we way overthink how these interactions are supposed to be, or how they're supposed to be prepared to happen. They should happen like this and then this. No, it's just us being human with each other and having conversations about things that we may differ, but being kind and caring in doing so. Third, we need communities like Oasis. This just I was pretty thrilled to see that was, I think social interaction is really, really important. You've probably heard me say before, if you've been around Oasis for the last almost 2 years. We know that it makes a difference physically, mentally, socially, all of that. But even so, if we are wanting to be reasonable people, where reality is known through reason, we really do need each other. And having opportunities like Oasis to bring different speakers and different ideas, and hopefully you don't agree with everyone. I hope that you don't, because I want to create conversation and dialogue where we can kind of start to chew on some of this stuff. If you don't want it, spit it out. If you think it's great, run with it, whatever. But what we're doing here tends to be unique. You don't have multi-generational opportunities to, one, interact with one another without traditional kind of religious structures. Of course, we've eliminated that aspect here. But through Oasis, speaker-wise, community moment-wise, we get to hear different people's experiences and thoughts on things. It's very powerful. And then outside of that, we create opportunities for you guys to connect socially. Go hang out, have dinner. And hopefully there are opportunities there for you guys to discuss and think about things, where we can think outside the box, maybe overcome whatever bias we may have, or help someone else get there as well. I'm going to close with this. I also think it should remind us to be humble. Like many post-religious people, I still have a knee-jerk reaction when I hear about certain religious beliefs or practices to be like, what? They think that? How can you believe that? You have to be crazy. I mean, Scientology, I guess I could say it appears, still kind of feel that way. But, you know, just the stuff where you're just like, how does this happen? Well, if you recall, a couple months ago or a while back, I talked about how I seriously thought my house was possessed by demons. You know, so, or maybe I'm just alone in the fact that I once thought crazy things. But the reality is, I think we should all be humble, because we could all be wrong, you know? And I think coming from a place of humility helps these conversations that are productive actually get somewhere as well. We are all human here, right? I think so. Last I checked, everyone seemed pretty human. Alone, we pretty much are a little bit weaker without each other. Together, we make each other stronger. Psychologically, physically, mentally, socially. We can help each other become better human beings who embrace diversity of thought. Imagine that. As a result, gain better insight into each other's perspectives on an experience of life. We need each other to live out a life where our reality is truly known through reason. That's it, guys. What time is it?
So early.
It's early. We got all kinds of time. Oh no. You know, Q&A with you guys always scares the crap out of me. This is me just being vulnerable. So I've got my I don't know answer ready for you.
Right on. Anyone have any questions?
Be sure, we'll preface, please ask a question, wait for the mic to come to you.
Morning, Helen.
Hey.
What were the books that you mentioned during the talk?
What's the book?
Or books, rather.
Books? Well, this is the one. Johnathan Haidt. There is a counter argument, not to basically this basic premise of the introduction, by Joshua Green. I think it's Our Tribal Minds. That's what I'm reading next, to kind of see how he differs and stuff. But Johnathan Haidt also wrote, oh no, I'm totally blanking, something on happiness. Anyone else read that? No? Any other Johnathan Haidt people who have read it? Yeah. Really good author, really good writer. Yes, this is thick. But it was actually really great and really interesting. So. Oh, yeah. He has a TED Talk.
In the circumstances you gave, in the circumstances that you gave, I have no trouble. But I do think we're going to have to think of it carefully before, because there's more to us. One of the things I think is, how are they going to react if this becomes known? And they are shunned like everybody they heard.
Sure, I wasn't advocating that everyone should go out and sleep with their siblings by any means. It's just, it was an example of how we have quick reactions. Because socially, you know, we think that it's not a good thing to even first cousins. You know, we make like art, we make Southern people jokes with that, you know. So, yeah, I totally understand that.
Well, since he brought up the topic, I'm curious on the perspective, your perspective and Johnathan Haidt's perspective, filtered through you, to the concept that sometimes pushing the envelope, crossing the line, saying, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want, causes a lot of reflection and facilitates the loop.
I think it can have its place. But I think most of the time, we're much more productive when we literally like to talk to the elephants first. When we have interactions with people where we're not feeling like we're defensive, so that gut reaction, that's you're talking about that self-reflection after the fact. It doesn't really happen that often. What you really does is look at our country. We're so polarized, right? So you have, you know, these really harsh, you know, statements coming from both sides, and I think just causing more distance. You lose the human factor. You know, there's no person behind, you know, the attacks that I'm sending out verbally. Does that make sense? So this is my personal, and I think Johnathan Haidt would say kind of the same way, that to have really productive, truly productive conversation that really helps us overcome whatever conclusions we already have drawn, and however we justify that, and they're usually emotional based. It has to be done in such a way, long term, that's going to be more humanizing. Does that kind of make sense? And Johnathan Haidt, let's see. I mean, that struck me, you know, his conclusions with that. Personally, I would say, for example, if you look at the secular movement, gosh, what was her name who founded it all? She was very vile. O'Hare, yes. Madeline, yes. Okay, very vile woman, but obviously she got the ball rolling. But from there, so the ball's already kind of rolling with this. So, you know, from now we have to create, you know, good human connection with community would be the next thing, because most of our lives are negative. You know, we deal with negative stuff constantly. Life is complicated, it's messy. And so why invite more of that negativity? No one's going to want to jump on board with that. So it gets people's attention, but you have to do so much more to get beyond that. And trust me, I mean, sometimes you try to reason with some people online, and it's just hopeless. It is hopeless. Don't do it. That's what I have to say. Anything? Yeah.
Okay, when you and your husband were relatively conservative, and you had the argument with your liberal friends, what was different in that argument? Because normally people tend to defend their same beliefs and even get more centered with it. So what was different?
One, we were friends. I think that actually makes a difference. So you're more receptive to kind of hearing things out. And I would say my husband and I do, and he'll talk about this, but if you tend to be more liberal in general, you do have a higher rating of openness and curiosity. And I would say we definitely rank high on the obviously. Rank high on the openness and curiosity side because we're where we're at today. So I think that kind of made a difference too. But it was, I mean, it took time. It wasn't like that conversation, we're like, oh yeah, we got it, and it ran off. It was kind of like, I hate the saying, because you hear it in a lot of religious circles, but like planting seeds, you know. You plant a seed, and then, you know, sometimes it gets watered, and different things come as a result of that. So I don't know if Larry'd have a different conclusion on that. But... Okay. It's not on.
Thank you. Ooh. Actually, yeah, no, kind of just more clarification on that. So you didn't necessarily, you didn't necessarily have a moment during that conversation like, oh, I think differently now. It was more like reflecting afterwards, like, wait, I want to think about that more.
Then we read, it led us to go ahead, to choose to read a book, obviously, because we tend to read books that we only follow our interests too. We kind of stay boxed in with that. So to read, granted he was Christian, so we were still dabbling in something that was still kind of safe because we were Christians at the time. So it was more of a kind of led us to start kind of, investigating different ideas and thoughts on that. And already with our working framework, so it wasn't like this huge disruption of what we believed already. Does that make sense? It was just a small step, small piece. Yeah.
Many years ago, my husband and I lived in Germany. My husband was in service in the 70s. And we had some very dear friends who were that we met there, out of our environment, because we were Americans both. And they were from Georgia, and we were from Minnesota. And in Minnesota in the 70s, you couldn't find an African-American person. I mean, I grew up, in a non-race, but part of it was, I don't know if it was part of it, but I never saw a black person until we went in service. And so it was easy. Well, we learned from these folks who were just lovely people, but they had a real prejudice against black folks, and they didn't express it with negative words or any of that kind of racist talk. But every once in a while, you'd hear a hint of it in our conversations. And so, after I got to know them real well, I said, well, to him particularly, the husband, I said, how can you feel that way? We're all the same under the skin, because you didn't grow up like I did. Well, he was right, I didn't. I didn't experience what he had experienced, and I don't even exactly know what that was, but somewhere in that, he formed this racist, and it's true, racist idea, which I'm sure he still holds on to today. My big one, I said, well, that's just outrage, that's just crazy, it's nuts. And I still believe that it's just not right in so many ways. And he said, well, the difference between me and other people is that I'm aware that I feel this way, so when I deal with folks, the African Americans, or blacks as we said in the 70s, but African Americans, I go over the end to be better, to be kinder, to be more polite, to be more respectful. And I said, so it's not really genuine? And he goes, well, I don't know, I can't put that word to it, but I work hard not to let that come through the behaviors that I do. And I remember being kind of stunned by that, because I think if you're an authentic person, you work on changing your mind. He had no intention of changing his mind, because he felt he was fair to the world. And that changed my perspective on how you can be a racist and still be fair, or if that makes any sense. And I discussed this with other people. They go, that's just outrageous. There's no excuse for it. I believe there's no excuse for it. That sort of made me step back a minute and go, well, I guess it's better to be a racist person and nice than a racist person and mean. I mean, if you're not going to be able to change their minds, you can discuss it to the cows come home. So part of it was just where we came from and the times. I had no experience, he had negative ones. So it's a complicated issue.
It's not simple. No, it's not simple. All right, we good? Okay. Well, thank you all today. Thanks.
Thank you very much.